Dr. Lemack, thanks for taking the time today. There are a number of currently approved treatments, both drug and non-drug therapies for overactive bladder. What are some of their limitations or drawbacks?
Okay, well, we could start with sort of the drug therapies, I guess, and they've been available for years and years and years. And it's not that they don't work to some extent; they do. They certainly help a lot of people, and have been the mainstay of therapy for decades. But there are a number of problems with them. I think they don't necessarily work as well as people would like for some people. They certainly can be associated with significant side effects, which we've known for years. So typically anticholinergic medications will have a lot of side effects in terms of dry mouth and constipation and dry eyes. And more recently, some concerns about cognitive issues with some of these medications. So, people generally don't stay on these medications for very long in most situations. I think the drop off is at least 80% if you look out far enough. So people traditionally don't stay on these medications. And there are new class of medications for overactive bladder beta agonists, which certainly have better side effect profile, but probably not any better in terms of efficacy overall. So that's been the problem with medications for a long period of time. We do have so-called third line therapies, which are available and have been available for a number of years, and that includes botulinum toxin injections in the bladder. That includes percutaneous tibial nerve stimulation, which is office-based treatment sequentially for overactive bladder with basically ankle stimulation in the posterior tibial nerve, and then sacral neuromodulation. And these can be effective when medications fail, and for some people are a really good answer. But they are a little bit more involved, a little bit more time consuming, and have other risks. And so, they're not for everybody either.
What do you think is driving the development of so many new treatments for OAB?
I think there's a couple things. Number one, I think that the ongoing recognition that there's a lot of people out there who just don't seek therapy, either because they aren't asked about their problems or they don't feel as though they can bring it up in their office visit with their primary care physician, or because it's just kind of lost in the shuffle with everything else that's going on with them. And then there are certainly those that, do try these therapies and then sort of give up after one therapy doesn't work and really I don't acknowledge that there are other things that are available. So I think that's one problem is sort of finding those patients, making sure they know that there are treatments available. And that's been a problem for a while. I think we do better than we used to, but it's certainly still a problem. And then the second problem and the reason for sort of this renewed and ongoing interest is that, we recognize some of the things I was saying earlier, that the medications don't do as good as we want. People don't stay on them for periods of time in many situations. And the third line therapies, while certainly helping a lot of people, haven't captured as many people as we thought they might. That may be because we're not doing a good enough job getting the message out. It may be because they're not as good as we'd like them to be. It may be because there's too many side effects or adverse events associated with them. It may be that it's too time consuming. Who knows? I think there's a recognition that while there's certainly a lot to offer and a lot of improvements, that we could be doing a much better job. And I think that's kind of what's leading to this ongoing effort to look for something better.
Please discuss the investigational beta agonist bivegron and what advantages it may offer.
Yeah, so I think that we've all really learned a lot about overactive bladder medications, and with the advent of mirabegron, for the last decade or so, it's really expanded our ability to treat patients who otherwise wouldn't be able to be treated because they can't tolerate anticholinergics or don't like the side effects or whatever it may be. So that's been a great thing, and I think it's certainly helped out a lot of patients. But it remains the only beta agonist that's available, and obviously there are drawbacks to having only one medication in a class that we can offer to our patients. So Vibegron seems to be another medication in this class that's a very good alternative. It's going through the processes now of seeking FDA approval, and hopefully that will happen within the next year or so. Certainly the initial data from the clinical trials is very promising, that it can greatly reduce urge incontinence episodes, and overactive bladder improvements are also seen in these patients. So, I think in our field, it's always nice to have alternatives. to different medications, and I think Vibegron clearly does that. They have been trials that directly compared to placebo, of course, but also trials directly comparing to anticholinergics, I think tolterodine. And it's expected the side effect profile is more optimal in the Vibegron arm. I don't think anybody's terribly surprised by that. So again, nice to have other alternatives for our patients that we can offer to them. And I think Vibegron certainly will be something we can add to our armamentarium.
How does Vibegron compare to the currently available beta agonist mirabegron?
So as far as I'm aware, no direct head-to-head, studies comparing the two, and I doubt very much that will happen anytime soon. So it's not very easy to answer that question specifically. I would be surprised if there were appreciable differences in the efficacy or side effect profile. But I guess time will tell, and we'll see once this drug hopefully comes to market, then we'll have a little more clinical data to try to answer that question. But up front, I would imagine that that they'll have similar profiles and be used in similar patient populations.
Tell us about the Renova implantable device and how it may be used to treat patients with OAB.
So Renova is an interesting device that's being developed by a company called Blue Wind, which is based out of Israel. And they've modified their device over time. I think the initial trials, it was secured in place, and now they're working on a new device that may be a little easier to put in and a bit easier to place in the office-based setting. So with most of these devices, they change things over time and try to make it better, and they're going through the initial clinical trials right now. But it is a device that's placed in the ankle. It's a tibial stimulator, and once it's implanted, then it is powered from the outside with to give it energy, and typically that is worn around the ankle during the times when you're doing stimulation. So the exact parameters that will be used once it's out and approved aren't clear at this point. That's the point of the clinical trials. But it is an implantable device. It is powered by an external source, and that can also dictate how often the stimulation is being applied. So it has great promise. I think we're all excited about it. Like with most of these devices, time will tell. We'll see how it compares. But it does offer the advantage of the tibial nerve stimulation without the weekly visits that we're currently doing with a percutaneous tibial nerve stimulator, where they have to come in for 12 weeks for 30-minute sessions, and then after that, every hour or two. So I think that's perhaps one of the reasons that PTNS, while it's certainly been a great addition to the things that we can offer our patient, maybe hasn't been as widely used as people thought it might be, because of that. It is a bit of a barrier for patients to come in to the office that frequently. So this will be something that people can do at home in the privacy of their own homes after that initial implantation.
Can you discuss the Equine device and how it may be used to treat OAB patients?
Sure. So Equine is another tibial nerve stimulator, a little different. It's about the size of a nickel. It's also implanted in the office with a small incision around the ankle. The unique thing about this is it doesn't require any other additional battery power. It in and of itself has a battery in it. And so it can be programmed to stimulate on a regular basis. I think in the clinical trials was every 2 days or so. So it's a very easy implant. Appears to be safe. The side of the adverse events associated with it appear to be minimal. Certainly the company that's making it has a lot of expertise in using this type of stimulator for other indications. So certainly they have a lot of clinical data trial experience. So again, we'll see where that pans out. They seem to be fairly well along in their clinical trials. So I'm eager to see where that goes, but it is a little unique because it has a battery in it. Doesn't require anything externally. Obviously will need to be replaced over time when that battery wears out.
Can you give us some background on the stim router and CanStim devices?
So those also are implantable devices, also going through clinical trials. They are controlled from external sources. They're also implanted in an office-based setting. They are sort of multi-electrode neuromodulation devices that can create a stimulation in and around the tibial nerve in a variety of locations depending on where you're stimulating. So you can control from the outside exactly where you're stimulating, much like in some instances, for example, sacral neuromodulation, where you can change the circuit and change where that actually is stimulating. So these clinical trials are ongoing. The trials are a little bit different. I think the CanStim, for example, is comparing a trial between the CanStim itself and sacral neuromodulation, and so a head-to-head trial. So it's kind of unique and interesting in that way. So we'll see. I think, again, all of these are a little unique, have a little bit of different attributes to them. But I think the bottom line with all of these is we're looking for a better way to treat patients, hopefully in an office-based setting, hopefully not having to put people to sleep to do this or getting them to the OR. Hopefully there's something safe, efficacious, and long-lasting. And I think that's, where we'd like to head with all of these things. But yeah, pretty exciting times, I think, for overactive bladder treatments.